So,
let's do it, Brandon.
All right, cool. We are live. Good to see you, my crypto friends. Welcome to the EOS podcast. We got a great show for you today. We've got Kevin Rose from EOS New York, everything a block away. So Kevin, introduce yourself, and then we're going to get into EOS and everything that's going on.
Yeah, hey everybody. Brandon, thanks for having me. My name is Kevin Rose. I'm co-founder and head of community of EOS New York. We were the first block producer in the Western world to introduce ourselves to the community and announce our candidacy back in January, which feels like a lifetime ago. My goodness. We focus on simple, scalable solutions where we can make the most impact and really concentrating on making EOS more accessible to the developer and the user, so both sides of the coin. So every tool that we build, every project we embark on is toward that end. So very excited to be here to chat about a couple of those things and a lot of the awesome things going on in the EOS space. Awesome.
Well, great to have you, Kevin. And yeah, EOS New York does so much for the ecosystem. We're going to get into your guys' roadmap, and you got some really exciting things coming up for EOS itself, and just continually building the community, which is awesome. So we will kind of ease into that. But one of the first questions I like to ask is, what is the most exciting thing that's going on in EOS right now? What do you think? What's one of our pivot points that's happening?
Oh man. Okay. So it's so hard to pick one. There's so much going on. The decentralized nature of the community and the varied skill set of the people that have really given it so much of their valuable time and effort and knowledge. It's impossible to pick just one thing, but it's great that everybody's off working on everything they're working on. For me, what's most exciting that we're not hearing too much about yet is probably inter-blockchain communication. So a lot of right now we have the EOS public blockchain, and it's certainly the biggest, baddest mofo on the block for EOS.io tech stack based blockchains, the mainnet, and it'll probably always be the mainnet. But we're going to have other chains that come up, and the ability for these to talk with one another, to leverage the tokens on one another, and to figure out innovative ways to complement one another is just going to make the mainnet stronger and the entire ecosystem stronger. I think we're going to hear more about it in the coming weeks, but right now it's pretty hush-hush. So, and besides that, the referendum, the ability to vote on things is going. We're going to see things rapidly change. Right? We have liquid democracy and block producer voting. Every 2 minutes, I could lose my job. Right? Or be up at number one, anywhere in between. But in referendum, we haven't yet, the policies and the features of the code and this, and, what do we do with inflation and stuff like that. We have not yet begun to see on chain what the network wants. We just have the little communities that we've been operating in to inform our opinions. So it's going to be so exciting for me as, head of community EOS New York to see how much of what I thought was going to happen actually does, or things that I didn't expect. So first inter-blockchain communication, and then the referendum and the resulting effects.
Yeah, those are both huge, and those are kind of these base level things that aren't, it's not the newest dApp or but it's this underlying structure that's going to affect everything. So on inter-blockchain communication, can you tell a little bit of a story about what that would look like, or an example, so that people, because blockchain is sometimes, it's really hard to conceptualize sometimes, like, why does that matter? Can you kind of paint a picture for people about that?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is kind of build it and they will come right now. It's like you've got two cities, all right? And the cities are really good at different things, and no one person really has any idea of what the entire city is capable of. But if you build a highway in between them, all of a sudden you have this chemistry. So the idea is that there are these connections, there are these highways that are built and maintained by groups or individuals, where you are able to, say, move a token from one chain to another. This is especially interesting when you look at the mainnet and it being the biggest and baddest, right? you've got the EOS token, and what if the EOS token was the base trading pair for all EOSIO based DApp tokens? So the same way that Bitcoin sort of runs the blockchain industry based on its volatility, being the base trading pair for everything, it goes up, things go up, it goes down, everything goes down. If EOS had this kind of an import within the community, but also the ability for this IBC to move a much more finite, a much more detailed example, non-fungible tokens, right? So these are tokens that are unique. It's like if I were to tokenize my car, it was represented by a single token on the blockchain. That's not fungible in that it's not interchangeable. A US dollar is fungible. I can trade it for a US dollar and they're exactly the same. An EOS token is fungible. But being able to move these non-fungible tokens across chains to trade them, to move them to another exchange. Wax is a great example. That's an EOSIO based decentralized exchange for NFTs, non-fungible tokens. So, the possibilities are unknown at this time, but I am all about the build it and they will come mentality right now.
Yeah. And those Wax tokens, I believe a lot of it's part of their focus is around non-fungible tokens relating to items within video games. Is that right?
Yeah. And that to me is that's kind of like, that's the first wave of retail level adoption of blockchain, and EOS is the best positioned blockchain to do that, to take advantage of that opportunity. Gaming is a $130 billion industry, and the thing that's missing from gaming is ownership of these items that people spend 100 hours to get this in-game item, this sword that enhances their character or something like that. The ability to own it, trade it, sell it, or buy them if you don't want to spend the time but enjoy the benefits of the item. It's going to change the way that multiplayer games, massively multiplayer games are played. Single-player RPGs, it's going to change how that works. At the London Hackathon, this isn't really NFTs, but at the London Hackathon, our co-founder, Rick Schlesinger, was there, and he saw a game that utilized the EOS blockchain to have interaction between the player and the viewer on Twitch. If you're familiar with Twitch, you're watching people play. They're very skilled, and you can support them in any number of ways. But in the way that this happened is like, so this guy's about to go into a boss fight, and he says on his stream, okay, everybody, I need you to power up my sword. And from your mobile device, you can engage with the player, power up the sword, and that connection is facilitated by the EOS blockchain. I mean, we haven't understood all the possibilities yet, but what it does is puts the player back at the center of the equation. And that's what blockchain is all about, right? It's taking the value creator and putting them back in the center of the equation, back in the center of the conversation.
Yeah, and that DApp you mentioned is called BitJoy for anyone who wants to look it up. And actually, we had a past show with the founder there. So yeah, that's a really cool DApp, and the video game industry is huge. And to give people who don't play video games an idea of how big it is, there was and kind of the core problem with not being able to own your products is there is ways to sell and trade your, let's say your magic sword that you've earned and you can sell it for $10,000 on, I think it's called Steam actually, but spelled STEAM. And so anyway, there's this guy who was basically a very wealthy from selling video game items, and Steam found some sort of, for some reason shut down his account. And this guy basically lost his mind, but there's a video of him driving his like Lamborghini backwards down the freeway because he had like a mental breakdown because Steam took like basically his life's work. So anyway, these maybe it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, but video game items are a real thing. People want, there's a need for people to be able to possess and hold on to their items. And so that's where these non-fungible tokens come in. And then, going back to the inter blockchain communication, if you had those non-fungible tokens, it sounds like you could just cross-chain communication. You could basically just trade them straight through to the EOS blockchain, like trade those wax tokens into EOS tokens without using an exchange. So kind of make
imagine a World of Warcraft, because it doesn't just enable ownership; it also creates scarcity for some of these in-game items. If you had, and this isn't really done now, I imagine it could be, but if you were to take a legendary item in a massively multiplayer MMORPG, and limit their existence to 5 in quantity, and their drop rate is astronomically low. Being able to own that item, you being an owner of the item, you're a celebrity now. But going back to the thing with Steam is that's really unfortunate that they shut down that guy's account. It's the same kind of thing where they push back against the modding community. The people that take aspects of games and they say, I'm going to build a new episode. I'm going to build a new expansion pack, and I'm just going to do it. Those people don't always have the opportunity to sell that kind of stuff, but the developers are afraid of it. They're afraid of relinquishing control. Steam is afraid of relinquishing control, but the thing is, they're not going to have much choice because there are going to be enterprising individuals that take advantage of the ability to create scarcity, to create digital ownership of items. And speaking of Steam, Ultra.io, Steam competitor built on EOS.
Oh, cool.
Check it out.
I'll write that one down, Ultra.io. Great. Man, there's so many, so many interesting dApps coming out. We've kind of come to the point where, we had this storm of just kind of hype, and now it's filtered out a lot of these projects. And now there's kind of these surviving projects that have risen to the top that are providing some sort of great idea, like, oh, wow, that is actually a great idea, like BitJoy or like, Ultra.io.
4 months in.
Yeah.
We're 4 months in.
And it's just starting. So it's great to see the platform kind of growing like that. It's really cool. So aside from dApps, there's also some ways that people have been taking EOS tokens and monetizing them. I know there's Shintai, which is a way that you can lease out your tokens, which people are waiting for a long time. Is there any other opportunities out there you've seen, like Shintai, or places for people to kind of gain rewards by holding EOS?
Shintai is the best and brightest option right now. We're a sponsor of Shintai, so we've actually joined with 10 or 11 other block producers to stake the resources required to operate it, and also to keep it free. So without block producers support, Shintai would charge fees. They don't because we support it, and that's we think that that's our job as block producers. We're paid to build cool things and give them away for free, right? We build the things that are necessary, but not necessarily the responsibility of any one individual. Mm-hmm. There's a cool other option if you own 1,000 EOS or more. EOS Lao Mao is a block producer in China, and they created the Bank of Staked. Stake, like, stake your token, Bank of Staked. And it's the same thing. It's basically like a vending machine. So Shintai is peer-to-peer, and Bank of Staked is more like a vending machine where you choose 7 days, and it costs you, you can get 250 EOS worth of bandwidth for 7 days, and it costs you 3 EOS. I can't remember the exact price, but if you have 1,000 or more, you can use that. But the big one is going to be Rex. It's going to be the Resource Exchange that's actively being worked on by Block One. Mm-hmm. They've done a ton of work in the GitHub repo. It seems imminent when that's released. And actually, I've spent some time today writing about that because there's more than meets the eye about Rex and how we're going to get it working, which have huge implications about EOS governance.
Oh, okay. Well, so that we hit on a couple things there. I'd like to go back to you guys are supporting Shintai. What's that support look like? Are you guys staking EOS so that so people can do this for free, or what?
Yep.
How is that? That's what it is. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So first, Shintai, the code base is governed by multi-sig permission set. So the code can't actually be changed without. So EOS 42, who has led the development of the project, doesn't actually own the code. To change it requires 6 of 11 block producers or sponsors to sign the MSIG to do it. So currently we stake 2,500 EOS in perpetuity, so that Shintai can be free. And there's 11 block producers doing that, and then we just bought 100 EOS worth of RAM for it. So ongoing, if it has resource needs, the Shintai development team will look to the sponsoring block producers to provide that, so that we can keep it free for everybody.
Cool. Yeah. So that's a good example of what block producers basically are. What block producers are for, to support the community in these kind of unseen ways that have large impacts. So, shout out to EOS New York for that. And EOS 42, who's put a ton of time into David Packham out there. They've put a ton of time into this Shintai.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And be sure to check out all the sponsors. If you go to Shintai's website, you scroll to the bottom and you can see the logos of everybody involved. There's 11 or 12 of us. So it's really great.
Wonderful. Okay. And then you were talking about the impact on governance and kind of, so go down that road a little bit.
Sure. And I'm writing this now. I hope that I can publish it before this comes out. Otherwise, oh well, I'll publish it right after. So the Constitution for EOS is not sufficient. Now, it's fine, but it's suboptimal. Okay, I use a couple of words to describe it now, but it's kind of in this gray area of like, it's all right sometimes, it's not all right some other times. And the reason why it's not all right for Rex is, what exactly can block producers do that, and what would require referendum? So block producers are arguably elected to manage the EOS blockchain. They are the custodians of its continuity and seamless upkeep, right? So obviously the code base, okay? And we have managed the code base and updated and optimized and experimented since launch. And we've done that without referendum. And nothing really has come up so far that would require it, except the Resource Exchange with Rex. And the reason why is because Rex in the code is taking eosio.ram fee account and eosio.names account, which are basically the accounts where the 0.5% fee for buys and sales on RAM go to, and all of the EOS paid for short names, which is a massive amount. I mean, an auction for a short name went the other day for 25,000 EOS. I think the first one, EOS, the short name, went for like 50,000. I actually can't remember, so please don't quote me on that. But the way, and the reason why it costs so much is I could create the name kevin.eos, and now that's my EOS account. But those are network funds. They don't belong to anybody, and it's millions of dollars. So do block producers have the ability to affect, move, or repurpose in any way network funds? I would say no. So I think that the addition of Rex, first of all, I'm assuming that Rex requires these funds to keep it running, to be able to keep the outflows of tokens back to those who have staked their own tokens high enough to continue to incentivize its use. And that makes sense. It's like tokens flow in from these fees, and then they flow back to token holders. Great. But the precedent is there that we need to be careful that we do not set a bad one, that block producers can do whatever they want with these funds, because Rex is a slam dunk. Everybody wants it. I have not heard one person say that they don't. But still, we need to be careful about the precedent. So I think there's a very cool opportunity for EOS to flex its governance muscle, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got this slam dunk referenda. We have a very good reason it should be referenda, in that these are tokens that block producers are not allowed to touch. And now once referenda is finished, let's put it out there. And I don't think that the first referenda that's successful is going to be the Constitution, V1, 2, 3, whatever. I think it's going to be Rex. And then it's just good momentum for the community to say, all right, we did it. We got one. We had a referendum. We decided what to do collectively without, burning the house down. Now let's go on to the next challenge and really motivate token holders everywhere.
Yeah, and just to be clear for people, the referendum is the voting portal referendum, I believe it's called. But basically, what it is where these ideas are proposed, and everyone, you guys in the EOS community, has a chance to go vote on it with your with your tokens and put your weight behind what you'd like to see happen. So so with the referendum and the voting, it's going to be really important, especially initially, to have these very simple, straightforward, logical things to vote on. And that's a great example of one that is straightforward. It's easy to understand. And so we can get some easy wins on that go in the beginning, because there's a lot of hurdles to overcome with the referendum, because, basically who can post the questions or the referendums, how they're worded, etc., really affects the outcome. So that'll be interesting. Has there been kind of some, or what are your thoughts on that, as far as is anyone going to be able to post questions, or how many of the same type of question?
I believe that in the beginning there is this kind of filtering process, and I'm unfortunately woefully ignorant of that filtering process at this time. I will brush up on it, you betcha, before it goes live. But yeah, that is going to be a challenge. My hope is that when we do get the Constitution to a good place, that good place will very clearly delineate roles and responsibilities, so that we know exactly what referendum is for. And we've written our own Constitution version at EOS New York, and we haven't published it because we don't think it's necessary to right now. But we have it here to serve as a benchmark for us when we're evaluating governance proposals, governance opinion posts, discussion in Telegram. We've got this in the back of our mind going, this is how we think it should be. But part of what's written there is block producers maintain the code. Current, past, and future, all optimizations, updates, new features, you name it. The block producers are elected to do that. That is our job.
Yeah.
Even if it were to change a Ricardian contract, as in the intent of the code changes, it's still block producer's job, except for network funds. If it ever affects those, it's not up to the block producer. And the governing documents, which right now we are considering the Constitution, reg producer, and vote producer. And there are a couple other governing documents which we have actually proposed with reg arbitrator and reg forum, which are two actions on the network which are used to identify dispute resolution vendors to the chain, so that they can provide services for EOS-based property. But that's kind of our vision is block producers maintain the code. That's why they're elected. But if we're going to change the Constitution, vote producer, reg producer, or touch any system funds, worker proposal, anything from inflation, anything from fees, block producer pay, has to be referendum.
Yeah, and I like that. I tend to agree or lean that direction. It feels comfortable and secure for people to know that, okay, block producers have this real specific designated role, because that's this elephant in the room with EOS. And this is this FUD that happens, is that, there's 21 block producers. They're going to manipulate and take control and, use the chain to their own advantage and steal funds, et cetera. There's this that's where the FUD comes from. And so I think the more, and there's truth to that if we were to do it incorrectly. And so I think that having real specific roles like you're speaking about, and making the block producers do what you guys are doing, continue to do that, is a really powerful angle that you guys are taking. So yeah, I appreciate that. That's cool.
My pleasure. And the difference between what we wrote and what currently exists is there aren't really any rules in what we wrote, in that there's nothing like strictly forbidden. Mm-hmm. It just says, here's what your job is. Go do that job. And then we sort of figure it out from there. Mm-hmm. Is the best way to say it. So it's defining the members' roles, defining a member, defining each type of member and what they're meant to do, their roles and responsibilities, because it's all about setting the expectation. We also have to remember that the Constitution or the Charter or the Terms of Service, or whatever you want to call it, depending on what you think EOS is, this is going to serve, it could, in many cases, a first point of contact with new token holders.
Yeah,
they need to be able to read it and not go, what the hell is this? They need to read it and go, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. There's 21 block producers. They do this. There's ECAF. They do that, you know, mm-hmm. And I'm not saying ECAF is in what we wrote or not in what we wrote, and not having the base layer thing. But yeah, so it's important that we set expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so a little bit bigger picture, I just had this kind of thought with your EOS New York logo behind you and talking about governance and, you know, everything. It's, do you ever kind of like think back on the United States forming and these guys sitting around a table, like writing the Constitution and trying to keep it simple and straightforward and so that it would last a long time? And you know, what kind of parallels do you see there?
Oh yeah, no, that's literally what I did. I went back and I read the United States Constitution.
Oh, cool.
You know, 3 or 4 times, and I was like, okay, what do they do that's so important? And the first thing was they establish who everyone is and what their job is. Mm-hmm. That's the most important thing that it does. It goes, there's a judiciary, there's a legislative, there's the executive. Here's the power that they have over each other. Go. Mm-hmm. Right? And we don't have that kind of perfect system, and nor do I consider myself anywhere on the same level as the founding fathers of the United States or any country in which, you know, these governing documents have been issued and been able to stand up to the test of centuries. So mm-hmm. Just using it as inspiration.
You're inspired by Benjamin Franklin. You're not.
Yeah. I mean, even the proposal, if we go back to when the first stuff with ECAF started, and I think the reason that we got into a lot of issues is because there wasn't sufficient. We did so much introspection that we forgot that there are some things that exist outside of EOS that have been working that we may be able to borrow. Mm-hmm. When it comes to how dispute resolution is set up on EOS and what we've proposed, which we've written about extensively, I won't go into all the details. You can read about it on our Medium, but I went and read the Federal Arbitration Act. I went and read the rules of dispute resolution for the ICDR, which is the International Center for Dispute Resolution, saying what are the people that this works for doing, and what can we borrow? And that's, we should be doing that. We should be borrowing anything that works, and we can find this Megatron version of it all together.
Well, yeah, standing on the shoulders of giants is definitely recommended. Why reinvent the wheel if you don't have to? So yeah, that's a quality take. So when you think about, when we think about governance, we think about building this history and governance, and life goes through these cycles where you see, it's happened 1,000 times, but let's just look at the United States, since a lot of people are familiar. We've had, 1776, we have about 250 years or so of it starting in one place as the Constitution, and then over time kind of tweaking and melding and turning into something different. is there a thought about trying to change that cycle, or do you think this is just the start of that cycle again, and in 200 years, it'll be unrecognizable? Or, that's not really a question. It's just that's something. There's thoughts on that.
There's just so much to unpack there. I am not a constitutional scholar by any means.
I'm just some guy on the internet. So
yeah. There are people who have gone to school to understand this document. And it's amazing. But the difference is that there are elected representatives on EOS, but it doesn't impede, once we have referendum finished and it's working, assuming it's working, the elected representatives doesn't necessarily impede the token holders from getting exactly what they want, right? So in the United States, we elect people to very long terms, 2 years, 4 years. And in EOS, we elect them for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So the level of accountability changes everything. And not only that, but the mechanism of voting, and I do think this very firmly, I believe this, that the one token being able to vote for 30 block producers has in many ways shaped the climate, shaped the ecosystem, and how we treat one another. And I was talking about this on a panel last night. The community that was around last August, November, et cetera, the most active people are kind of all block producers now. Right, everybody was cutting their teeth and figuring out what does a block producer look like, sound like, do, and then how does the code work, and Dawn 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. But the culture that was cultivated was this thing of collaboration and cooperation, right? And I think it's a direct result of this one token vote for 30, because it meant that your success was not necessarily my failure. I can be successful in the eyes of a token holder, and so can 29 other groups.
Okay.
So it's like I can help my neighbor with the reasonable expectation that it's not going to hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not a zero-sum game of everybody trying to compete for the vote. It's we can collaborate, and none of us are as smart as all of us, kind of thing. So that's the cool thing that I think has led to where we are and why the space is so collaborative. But the liquid nature of the continual democratic election of block producers makes it so that there's very little blocking the token holders from having their opinion be heard, which in the United States many can feel like it is. Mm-hmm. So this, I think, is a key difference there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. And I hadn't put that together with the one token representing voting for 30 block producers before, but that makes sense as well. So, and to kind of bring my thought full circle there with the with how old governments were built and how EOS, I feel like it's also standing on the shoulder of giants. Like, we don't need to throw out 10,000 years of history of humans figuring out ways to structure themselves and, civilize themselves and work as communities. Like, some of that works. Actually, a lot of that works. But some of it doesn't work. And so I feel like EOS is these really important fundamental tweaks to a system that has some problems, but you don't need to throw the whole thing out. It doesn't have to be this total, burn it down, decentralize everything type of mentality. It's more of this, let's take the best stuff from governments for the last thousands of years and let's implement these really kind of radical changes with the voting every 2 minutes and the transparency, which I think is big, and integrate those, and then let's see what happens. And so I agree with you that that I agree with you that I'm not an expert on government and I'm just a guy on the internet. but that's my thought. I think we're in some really interesting times here. So I love talking about it. So
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So let's get into your guys' roadmap a little bit. I saw that, I mean, you guys are doing all kinds of stuff. One that caught my eye was the Global Outreach Meetup. It looks like you guys are, I mean, you're doing tons of things, and this is probably one of the smaller things, but you guys are sponsoring EOS meetups around the globe. Is that kind of how that's working?
And you know what, this is like, I wish this, you call it a small thing. I had hoped it would be a big thing. I have not had many people take us up on this. So we'll, if you want to host a meetup wherever you are, about EOS, and just, you want to order a pizza and get a room, at a, you know, invite 10 people, and you want to talk about EOS, or you got a DApp idea or whatever, we'll cover the costs up to $250. And no one's taking us up on this.
Well, hey, I'm going to set a good
giving away money.
I'm going to set a good example for the people out there, and I will. I'm going to put together a meetup in Santa Cruz, and I'll have more than 10 people there, and I'll let you guys know about it. But I think that's killer. I mean, when I saw it, to me, I was like, oh, that's big. But I saw that there was, I didn't see a ton of people like, I want to do it, and I was wondering why that was. But
we've budgeted thousands of dollars for this. Like we want people. So we can't, right now we can't afford. We had hoped that the worker proposal fund, that we could take $3 million and have developer trainings all over the world.
Yeah.
Right. No block producer can afford $3 million and have developer trainings all over the world. You can have developer training in your backyard, right? and we've done that, and we are doing that. Mm-hmm. But when we're thinking about these big scalable things, I just want people to hear about EOS, because if you go on Meetup, the place where meetups are organized, Meetup website, there are about 60,000 people that are registered in EOS groups. Well, that's great until you look at the levels of very mature blockchain ecosystems like Ethereum. They've got 1.2 million. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, let's just offer money. I mean, there's no way that I could manage the creation of meetups all over the world. But people that want to have one they can manage their own, and we'll just pay for it, and that's it. And so we just want to enable people to be able to share ideas and learn.
Yeah. So that is, to any of you listening to this podcast or watching on YouTube, go to EOS New York and start a meetup and let them know, because they want to, they want people to do this. They're not just like saying we want to pay for it. They actually do. They want to help the community.
You can email us at community@eosnewyork.io. And all you need to do, send us a picture with you in the meetup, and just, any kind of proof you want to provide, and send us the receipts up to $250 equivalent. So we'll send you EOS, and it's up to you what you do with that. But that's our promise. So we will follow up on that.
That's cool. And Kevin, that's really important, because there's people like me who, I ran the biggest Steemit meetup in San Francisco, and I ran it for a long time. I ran it for over 6 months, and I was having a great turnout. I found a venue. I had sponsors. But it was taking me a couple of days. Yeah, I'd have all the setup and stuff, and then I'd have a day drive into the city, which is an hour and a half away. I'd set up, I'd come home. It was taking a full day in midweek to do this. And I reached out to Steemit Inc. and reached out to places for sponsors, and just it all fell on deaf ears. And I ended up basically canceling the largest Steemit meetup in the Bay Area, because there was no support for it. And so I think that there's people out there who just enough to just make it break even, at least, who are going to hear what you guys are doing and take you up on it. So that is big for the community, because they're the people who build those grassroots meetups are, they're real people, and they're the ones who drive the community. So I agree. That's bigger than it sounds. So the global meetup outreach, that's awesome. So another kudos to EOS New York.
I hope we get a few takers.
Yeah, for sure. And then it looks like you guys are going to be expanding your staff. You guys have been, doing a lot of things as a block producer. What's your staff expansion look like, and where are you trying to grow?
Yeah, so we actually we already expanded in that we hired a community manager in China, and last night was our first meetup in China, where we had about 30 people come and discuss, and it's we want to enable this this sharing of ideas, but we also kind of do it for selfish reasons too, is because we want to know what's going on in the communities that are on the other side of these massive language barriers, sometimes these cultural barriers. So it's important that we understand token holders, not just Western token holders, not just English speaking token holders. So we've expanded into China so that we can better understand what matters to the token holder in China and what they're thinking. And then the next progression there is to go to Korea, and then from there is we just want to have as many languages available to us to translate our content as possible. So that's kind of the plan there. But one of the things that because I'm not part of the technical team of EOS New York, I don't always get to talk about the technical things that we're doing. But we most of our staff expansion is going to be there. It's hiring more DevOps. It's where we already work with a number of developers. That's where the staffing money is going to go, because we need to build things. So we're building developer libraries. We're building user tools, developer tools. We're building a hardware wallet. We're building some super secret stuff around that hardware wallet. And what we want, because I think EOS New York has a reputation about being very involved in governance, but you need to have something to govern. And so, we've done a lot of work in building these. We have a technical expertise that I don't think we get to talk about very often. So we're going to hopefully release a tool this Friday. I don't know if you know the EOS Resource Planner, which is something we built, which says, I need X number of resources for CPU, networking, and RAM. How much does that cost? Okay, we'll go to our calculator and you can find out. And we were the first people to build that because I don't know why anyone else didn't think of that. But that's such a moment. Like, the developers need to know what are the upfront capital costs building on the EOS blockchain. So now you're the user and you're like, okay, I go to this calculator. I don't know what any of this means. I'm not a developer. This doesn't matter to me at all. Yeah. Well, the other side of this is you have X number of tokens. How many things can you do? So that's our tool will answer that question on Friday. Oh, that is a very cool. That is a cool idea. So people can plug it in and see what's available to them. Okay. Yeah, in real time. So what are you doing with EOS Bet? You want to roll some dice or whatever. How many times can you roll? Go to our tool, check it out. Okay, cool. And you guys are doing a couple other things too. It sounds like you're building, this is maybe in the future, but it's called the Central Park Testnet or something of that nature for developers. Yes. Okay. So there's no shortage of testnets right now. You've got the Jungle Testnet is very mature. Kylin Testnet, which is in the Asian communities. We want to create a test network for developers that's a full-blown production environment, and basically sort of whitelist it. So if you want to get on it, just ask and we'll let you in. But this is somewhat of a controlled environment for you to take what you've built and go break it. Without having to assume the costs of the EOS tokens to test it, or to assume the costs of running the nodes for a test network yourself. So this is just one of the things that we think a block producer should be able to offer back to the community, and a box we want to check. And is that what would be the main difference between Jungle Testnet? Is it the controlled environment basically of whitelisting people, or what would be go ahead. Well, no, I think our head of technology would be best suited to answer that, because it's it's Buddy Deck. It's his brainchild of how he wants to structure this thing, but it is offered to be a free service to developers to test what they've built.
Okay.
So that's the goal.
Good. That's a dangerous road to non-tech guys going down a tech conversation. Yeah. So I'll stop there. Cool. You guys also have a DApp support program in the future, and what's that look like? What do you think the role of block producers kind of supporting DApps in the ecosystem is?
Okay, so this this is happening now.
Okay.
So we actually already are advising a few DApps, a few development teams. So our combined backgrounds is technology, business, and communication. So it's the way that we have run EOS New York. We think are three very important pillars for any successful business anywhere, built on the blockchain or not. So we, Rick Schlesinger, our head of business and strategy, he spent almost a decade at Ernst & Young doing mergers and acquisitions. So he's seen every pitch deck ever written, right? So we can help position, identify the good teams and help position them to get in front of VC, of venture capital. Sorry if you just heard my computer beep. This thing is actually this thing is actually going to evolve pretty quickly, and we're going to have some fun things to talk about. Over the coming probably a month and a half. It's going to get a little more exciting.
Great. Well, then I'll plan to follow you guys and bring you back on the show when the next kind of big developments start coming through. So, as far as marketing materials, you guys come from you guys do wonderful marketing and branding yourselves. What do you think about EOS marketing materials and providing those for the community in the future?
So this was my favorite thing. So the marketing communication is my job, and and it's not just marketing of EOS New York. It's the marketing of EOS because kind of a rising tide lifts all boats. So what I wanted to do was to develop a suite of assets that could be distributed across the globe to any block producer. That essentially these assets were block producer agnostic and also language agnostic, and they would be used to market EOS to a variety of segments: the token holder, the developer, basically those two segments. So the amount that we budgeted for that was very high, and when we budgeted that, the token price was about $10. So we have had to put that on the back burner for now, unfortunately. But we are pretty poised and ready to go with that stuff. It's we're talking way into six figures to get this done.
Yeah.
So that's
future roadmap.
Yeah. So my past life, I ran facets of Super Bowl campaigns for Fortune 500 automotive. I know how that stuff works, and actually I was really surprised to see Block One doing build on change, build on EOS. I think that's great. I think that they need to do more with it. But I think we're going to see a lot more from Block One in terms of marketing EOS IO, not the EOS public blockchain, although people think that they're synonymous.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and the marketing stuff is fun, but really the cool stuff that we're doing is the hardware wallet, which we're building for EOS, which is exclusive to EOS. It's built for EOS. Right now, if you try to go use your Ledger, Ledger cannot support the signing of arbitrary transactions with the current third-party DApp or app that's deployed on it. You can't create a new account with your Ledger right now.
Mm-hmm.
You can't sign an MSIG with your Ledger right now. And I wasn't part of the development of however that worked with the bounty, et cetera, but we need something better. We're not going to, I think that Ledger is capable of doing those things. We evaluated working on a Ledger app as well. And then we said, you know what, this is a multi-coin wallet. It's built, it's a generalist wallet. We need to build something for EOS. We need to build something that you use, because there are dApps built on EOS. And if you want to go put in your 4-digit PIN every time you want to sign a transaction with your Ledger, every time you're playing a game or you want to roll dice, well, that's just a bad user experience. So we want to create a good user experience and good tech behind it to make sure that your private key is secure at the same time. That's our goal, and we're looking at right now the end of January to have this live on the market. We've built it. It's done. It works. We've tested. We're in the mass production phase right now of making sure that we can consistently create thousands of these and distribute them all over the world.
Wow, I see. Somehow that totally slipped my my research. I read over hardware wallet, and I saw this pop up, and I was just like, okay, whatever, another computer wallet. But you guys are talking about producing a physical hardware wallet akin to the Ledger that's EOS specific.
Yes,
right?
we have built a PCB.
Yes.
PCB.
That's fantastic.
We designed the case. We've named it, branded it. We have the technology behind it. This is going to be good.
Yes.
And we want it to work, and we want it to work for EOS. We want to go after Ledger.
Cool.
If you're an EOS token holder primarily, we don't want you to think about your Ledger ever again.
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I hold majority of my my cryptos in EOS, and it is a big pain point for me to not have like a hardware wallet that's specific to the main coin I'm holding. It's kind of annoying, like you're saying, for all these different little things you want to do, that just the UX isn't there. So that's huge. That's
and
probably
at a fraction of the price. And at a fraction of the price of the Ledger.
Well, I love it.
Yeah, we're trying to get it and I can't. We've thrown around some numbers, and we're trying to actually kind of walk back from that, because you go through the process of production of these things, and you're like, okay, this costs this much, and that now we're looking at the real thing. So we want to make sure that the next time we say a number that it's accurate.
Okay. That's, and you definitely have that feeling when you buy a Ledger or a Nano. You're like, why does this thumb drive cost so much money? I think a lot of people have that when they get it, like, okay, well, what's going on here? So
they've made I have one. They've made a beautiful product,
for sure.
And it's secure and it's trusted, and there's nothing wrong with it. But when you apply it to EOS in a vacuum, you start to see that there are deficiencies. Mm-hmm. and that's just the reality of a generalist product. That's mm-hmm. not. I'm not saying anything bad about Ledger. They're a fantastic team and they built a fantastic product. But it's hard to, if I have a tool that does every job, and then I build one tool that does one job, I'm probably going to build a tool better than the other one.
Yeah, and I love Ledger as well. Actually, it's been my mainstay. So, and it makes me feel really secure, and it's straightforward. It's but like you said, it's a generalist tool, and it's also one of those things that you get this clear feeling that it won't be as expensive in the future. Like clearly the price is coming down on these over time, because it's so, there's not much actual hardware there. So, and
the thing that it pains me, because there's so many awesome things that are happening with this hardware wallet that we're going to introduce to the developer community as well, that we just can't talk about yet, because we want to be the ones to do this, mm-hmm. And then once we do it, anybody can do whatever they want with it. But yeah, we have put a lot of work, months of work into building this, and right now we're looking around for an independent code review. So this is like we're launching a full-blown consumer product.
Fantastic.
This isn't a DIY hardware wallet. You're gonna buy it. It's going to come in a beautiful case. It's going to be seamless, and you're just going to be able to use it without thinking too hard, and it's going to keep your private key safe.
I love that. And that's, that is EOS New York's style. You guys have definitely branded yourself that way, which I appreciate, is that, you've built trust with the community that things are done professionally and done all the way. And so I'd expect to see the same thing with your hardware wallet. I'm really excited for that. That'll be cool. Yeah. And good job by building that reputation for yourself. By the way, I know you're a big part of that. So, we all wake up every day, and we are thankful to be able to continue to do this full time. It's not work. Yeah.
It's not a vocation. It's not a calling. It's like this concept of, I stumbled across this Japanese concept of purpose, where it's something that you're good at, that you're passionate about, that the world needs, and that you can get paid to do. And it's ikigai. And it's a word that's been thrown around the space. And that's really what I think a lot of block producers would tell you. It's like, this is love.
Mm-hmm.
Doing this is the single greatest thing that I've ever been a part of in my professional career, and probably ever will be a part of. So we're just happy to keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, it's a beautiful time in history. I think that a lot of people share that same feeling. I was telling you before we started the podcast, I do a early morning walk to kind of get ready for the day, and I hear the cars going by, and everyone's just zooming to whatever office. I just picture myself back in the day, which wasn't that long ago, driving to my office, being on the phone, and all of my old work life and what it is now. It's just, it's living your passion and it being work too is a beautiful thing. So
the problem is you can't put it down.
Yeah. Once you go down the rabbit hole, then everything else falls away. It's funny. So
well, there's the EOS never sleeps, and sometimes neither do we. So I always say, sleep is the cousin of death.
Yes, that's
Nas.
I like that saying. I like that. Yeah. Especially since you guys are trying to bridge the gap a little bit between the the Western world and the Eastern world, EOS worlds, and get that communication going. I mean, you guys are really, New York's going 24 hours, so and the city that never sleeps as well. You've got a lot of things not acting in your favor as far as getting sleep go.
Yeah, well, much to the chagrin of my wife. She's like, "Can you not work right now?" I'm like, first of all, it's not work, and no, it never stops.
Yeah. Great. Well, we'll kind of start to wind down here. I've got one more question for you, and then if you have anything else you'd like to mention about projects that are going on, feel free to chime in. But we'll take it towards the end here. So my kind of last question is about the Block One voting. I saw them tweet. They put out a tweet. Why do you as a block producer deserve our vote? And so sounds like Block One is getting ready to vote. What are your thoughts on that? And how do you think that'll affect we've got some suspect block producers that are getting paid currently. Do you think that will have a big enough effect to knock them out of the pay ranks?
I don't think that tweet indicates that they're going to be voting imminently. Okay. I think that Brendan is a very intelligent, smart person that knows how to get people moving. Block One intentionally stays arm's length from any block producer. They don't favor any block producer, but that doesn't mean that they aren't aware.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their biggest client essentially is the EOS public blockchain, and they know who's running it.
Mm-hmm.
I give them the benefit of the doubt. They know who's running it. So I think that was a cool tweet. We took part in it. I actually spelled a word wrong in the tweet, and I was like, God damn it. But why should we vote for you in 280 characters? There's too much going on. I responded, and you know, it was so overwhelming to see the response from some of the community members. It was like, you're selling yourself short. You're doing more than that. And I go, thank you very much. And you know what? You only have 280 characters. But so with Block One voting, one, I don't think that they're going to anytime soon, because they said that they would only vote when they would be the minority. They would mathematically be the minority in that they would not be over 50% of total votes staked, but they would essentially, if they voted right now under current circumstances, murder the chain, because the standbys would, the pay cliff would be at like 32.
Okay.
We'd have no more paid standbys. We'd have 10.
Okay.
And what needs to happen is either more people vote, or we increase the number of block producers people can vote for. So more people vote in that the impact of Block One's token vote is lessened, or you can vote for 100 block producers, and then we wouldn't be making the pay cliff exist at 31 or 32 or whatever it is. When I did the analysis, I did it myself. I built a model that just, you know, said, okay, if we introduce 100 million votes in the current top 30, what happens? Everybody stops getting paid. So yeah, I just thought it was a cool tweet to show the power of the community and show the engagement by block producers. But I don't think it was indication that they were going to vote. I think they probably already know in the back of their mind who they would. But before they do, we need to change some things so as to not, you know, neuter the chain by reducing the number of standbys to 10. So those are kind of all my thoughts.
Well, that's great insight. Actually, I'm really glad I asked that question, because I was going to just skip it, but that's great insight, because I didn't realize what power they still have. I mean, I thought that it was less voting power that they had currently. So
there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of PR. The implication of the PR of that is also big. I mean, it's basically, you know, mommy and the way that Block One is positioned is that they would essentially act as a whitelister. You want to be a block producer? Great. You can't be a block producer unless Block One gives you the thumbs up. And then the community can decide who the top 21 is. Right? But the way that would be received by the industry at large would be mommy and daddy coming to take care of their chain.
Yeah.
Right? So let's not do that immediately.
Yeah, there's kind of the lesser of two evils. We've already kind of dealt with the FUD around, there's some block producers that are kind of bad actors, possibly, that are, you know, getting a little bit of EOS from the chain. We've kind of already dealt with that. That's a little bit of a given, and we're going to fix it over time somehow. And that's there. I mean, the worst thing is that Block One has backed themselves into a corner. Because they said, all right, you know what, here's our constitution. So they made very clear their position on a number of controversial aspects that on topics in the community. So what they're saying is, if we have 100 million tokens, we have the ability to whitelist block producers if and when we vote. If you do not agree with the choices that we've made clear on these controversial topics in our constitution, then you are not invited. You are not invited to the party. So this could have looked a lot differently if Block One had abstained from wearing their heart on their sleeve. Now, I'm not saying that their opinions are wrong or bad. You know, Dan is a brilliant engineer, period. So we should absolutely pay attention to the things that he thinks and has to say. But if you want to act as this whitelister, they can't so position themselves as the moral authority. If they had been more of, you know, we'll be able to evaluate you technically, and your politics and the way that you engage the community is entirely up to you, and we will allow the chain
to self-govern, rather than them saying, we'll allow you to govern within these confines.
Yeah. 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 That makes sense. And Dan kind of wearing his heart on his sleeve is a double-edged sword. It's like we get insights into his, thoughts, just kind of opinions, and and him being so, such a great engineer. It's so fun and interesting to hear, okay, well, here's what Dan's thinking now, or in it, he's kind of just going for it. So just from an outside perspective, it's like, that's great. It's nice to have that insight. But then from a perspective of, marketing almost, it's hard to have him putting these strong opinions out, or Block One putting these strong opinions out, because like you said, because there's these greater implications that maybe aren't thought of within the governance and within the marketing with EOS as a whole. So
even right now, and I don't think what I'm saying is a dissenting opinion. It's just, I'm just thinking out loud, but am I risking our position in the top 21 by saying what I'm saying right now? If Block One were to be actively voting. Another thing that they have said is they've advocated very openly that they want to abolish the 4% of total tokens circulation, the inflation that goes into the worker proposal fund. They've said, we have $1 billion in venture capital. We will direct that to the chain that does not have a worker proposal fund. I don't know if that's their official stance, and I actually can't procure the source in which I read that. So maybe I may have dreamed it. I'm pretty sure I read it from Dan in Telegram. But I mean, right there, they've essentially removed the choice from the community to be able to decide whether or not that they believe that they can collectively govern a worker proposal fund.
Yeah, it is a really tentative area that we're kind of sitting on here for sure, and that's probably kind of the main issue as a whole that EOS deals with, is this relationship between Block One and the community, and how Block One manages that and how they approach the community, and it needs to be done very carefully, and so it's something I pay attention to, and obviously we all follow Dan on Twitter, so we're privy to what he's thinking at any moment. So we will see. I think that I'm hoping, my thought is that Block One will be able to kind of step back, or take some steps back, or even change their opinions, because I don't mind if they take a different approach, or if they say, you know what, we said too much, these aren't our thoughts anymore, you guys can
Well, they did walk back the voting thing. They said, Dan was like, we're going to vote. And then Block One was like, well, we'll vote when we're the minority. So like we reserve that, basically what they've been saying all along, we reserve the right to vote. We're not going to vote anytime soon. But there's this huge misunderstanding outside of the EOS community about the relationship between Block One, about what happened in the ICO, about what EOS IO is versus the EOS mainnet. And that is not going to be solved anytime soon, because there is not a single journalist in the blockchain space that is writing about this accurately. They are not understanding that EOS IO is an open source software that is maintained by Block One. Any updates that are issued are at the full discretion of block producers, whether or not that they are actually implemented. There is a gap between Block One and the EOS mainnet. And then you get direct comparisons of the EOS launch to the launch of Tron, which is run by the Tron Foundation and head by Justin Sun. And there was no qualms about the clarity of that. It was, they were in charge, and it went very smoothly, which is evidenced of the centralized nature of its launch. The EOS launch was chaotic in comparison because it was so decentralized. There were 200 groups getting on a conference call every couple days going, are we ready or not? And it's like, that's true decentralization in action. And people are saying it's consensus by conference call. It's like, well, what are these core coders, these core dev teams of SIA, for example, just decided to remove ASIC mining support and they decided that themselves. They're the core dev team. You don't get a say. What is that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, you want to talk about consensus by conference call. We're watching decentralization in its own form with EOS, and then people thinking they're looking at the decentralized launch of Tron and really just watching the maestro of Justin Sun ordering a certain order of events to happen. So it's just having people understand exactly what the EOS mainnet is, the EOS.io open source software is, and Block One's role in all of this is something that's so important, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon because the people writing about it don't understand it themselves.
Yes, that's so true. And it begs the question is, even if the people writing about it understood it, would the people who have their opinions set read it or care, So we do have this situation that's almost the same that you see in the political environment, where there's these polarized views and people want to say, they're maximalists, the Bitcoin, the code is law, anything else is absolute garbage. Like they don't want to take time to understand. And then so there's these different, people tend to be closed-minded on it. And EOS takes, it's one of a kind technology that's the first of its kind in the history of our known universe, and it takes time to dig in to understand. So if you have a cursory understanding, you're not going to get it. And like you said, I don't see that changing anytime in the near future. It's going to only have to change by leading by example and showing people. And
yeah, we just have to be, and it sounds like I've drank the Kool-Aid, and I totally have. We're a block producer, but that doesn't mean I'm prevented from seeing any obstacles or issues that we have. That's all I'm working on ever, is trying to overcome those obstacles and issues. So I'm very well acquainted with them. But to hear a Bitcoin developer call EOS a scam at this point is like, you are being willfully ignorant of what is happening around you, in that a single dApp on the EOS public blockchain has eclipsed both Bitcoin and Ethereum in total transaction processed in a 24-hour period. Wake up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Stop saying that which can be introduced without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. And so anybody claiming it is a scam without substantiation behind it at this point is just like, stop. You're smarter than that. These are smart people. So it gets frustrating at times to hear that, but we have to just be so good that we can't be ignored.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have to be selectively ignorant of the EOS haters sometimes, because it does get frustrating. I don't have time to, as Satoshi said, if you don't understand, I don't have time to explain it to you, type of mentality.
Yeah.
And what's cool about EOS, the EOS community, is a majority of the EOS community, I would say, has a path similar to mine, where I started with Bitcoin, dug in deep, went to Ethereum, dug in deep, then got into BitShares, and then Steem and Steemit, and then evolved into EOS. And so it's not, I didn't just jump in and be like, I didn't just jump in and drink EOS Kool-Aid. I know I have my interpretation of the whole ecosystem. And I think a lot of people that have found their way into EOS have taken a similar journey. So,
yeah, I think that's actually it's a pretty accurate summary of the learning curve of where you travel. You hear about Bitcoin, then you hear about blockchain, and you understand that. Then you learn about Ethereum, and then you can go any number of ways. And so going back to the marketing project that we wanted to have with these scalable assets that are language and block producer agnostic, so that they can be used all over the world, we want to start to cut in line and get in front of some of these. We want you, and that we're far away from this, but we want you to hear about EOS, then blockchain, or Bitcoin, then EOS, or Bitcoin, then blockchain, then EOS instead of Ethereum. So that's where we need to get in front of people. There are a lot of, I don't want to sound like conspiratorial, if that's a word, or conspiracy theorist, but there are a lot of people who have a vested, or seem to have a vested interest in disparaging EOS in the media. So, you know, and actually, I want to maybe end on a more positive note. The EOS community, the dispute resolution process on EOS stopped a $10 million US hack, a $10 million US dollar hack the other week.
Yeah.
The transactions processed are eclipsing entire other blockchains in 24 hours. Inter-blockchain communication is being pursued actively by block producers and community members all over the world. There are dApps that are receiving up, you know, parts of this billion-dollar VC war chest that we have. There, I mean, the amount of opportunity here is massive, and the reason why this is all possible is because the EOS software is constructed in a way, it's architected in a way that you, the user, can stumble into a decentralized application that's built on EOS public blockchain or EOS.io and have ownership of tokens and assets. And you can do all of this without ever having to really know what any of those words mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
The developer can architect the experience in such a way that you are just using an application like you have done for years. So that's the amazing thing.
It is. And at this stage, it really comes down to a race towards usability, the UX, the adoption of the next level of early adopters, because that's where everyone has gotten stuck. The Ethereum is a good example, got stuck at, or is stuck at, kind of that next level of sophistication where it's less sophisticated, where it's just easy to use. And that's where I think that we're going to start see, that's where EOS is currently pulling away, is that these usable tools are coming out on a daily basis, and it's starting to become a flood of dApps and, you know, your hardware wallet coming out and things like this. And just it will become a runaway train at some point. It's what do you think on that note, there's it would be hard to stop the momentum EOS has. I try to picture what kind of maybe a black swan event could be that could stop that. Do you see any vulnerabilities there or anything like that?
I mean, yeah, the equivalent of a 51% attack on any chain. Mm-hmm. I mean, that would suck.
Yeah.
That would really divert our attention from building. So I don't think it's unsalvageable to come back from that. But, you know, anything that would result in a hard fork, a contentious hard fork, would be disruptive to the progress of EOS. Just like I think it's been disruptive to other blockchains in the past. But, you know, none of those problems are unique in that they haven't been dealt with elsewhere. We're trying a new way to deal with them, which is that the stakeholder has a direct and palpable say in how things are run. So, you know, we kind of just have to, hope for the best, prepare for the worst kind of thing. But the thing is that the technology is very stalwart. Maybe that's a good word at this point. So I'm not too fearful of that kind of scenario happening, because everything is architected in such a way that the incentives prevent you from trying to crash and burn everything. For you, and just like on other blockchains, you know, there would be such huge capital cost to trying to take down any blockchain network that you're not going to set your own pile of money on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. And exactly. You're not gonna do something that hurts your own pile of money. That's people act in their own self-interest, and that's the cool incentives being aligned that we've got going on. So, and
the crazy thing was, I was on a panel last night, and there was someone who was very skeptical about EOS and having voting, the introduction of the human element, and, you know, fearful of block producer collusion, you know, et cetera. They've read the CoinDesk articles, right? And and then later in the discussion, it came up like, what about the 51% attack? And they're like, well, you wouldn't do that because it costs so much to get that and to attack the Bitcoin network. We're like, yeah, that's what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Why does that principle not also apply here? You know, it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? I can't really imagine the logic behind that, where that would apply, that you'd want to basically crush your own currency, you know, with that type of attack. So, yeah, the same logic does seem to apply. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were, you know, working as kind of a almost vetting or intermediate or helping dApps get funding for VCs. What do you see in that area for dApps that are out there who are building? What level of completion, basically, are they looking for MVPs, betas with users, or how far along are VCs looking for dApps to be for funding at this point?
So it's interesting you say that, because I've never gotten a question about the perspective of VC and what they're looking for. It's always like, well, what stage is the dApp in itself? Mm-hmm. And just starting there are white papers to functioning products with user bases, and everything in between that we've seen. I don't know, like you and I, the people listening to this show, the developers in EOS, they are the most plugged in. Like we are so on the tip of the spear, the cutting edge of what's going on, that unless you are doing this day in and day out, it is hard to keep up. It's why we launched a fun weekly digest, the EOS Echo. You can sign up on our website.
Yeah, that's great.
Shameless plug. But the VCs are. They're figuring out their strategies. I mean, all this money just hit the $1 billion in the past 7 months, right? I mean, the complexity of those deals sounds massive. Just figuring out who can move the money when and where and why, and then developing the strategies behind how to deploy it. I think that we're seeing those evolve as the ideas and the capabilities of the developers and the software are evolving as well. So I don't think that there's a clear-cut answer. I think that if you asked, and that's probably why they split it up, right? You have Block One has deployed this capital across 3 or 4 VC groups across the world, so that you can have access to geographic regions. You have language barriers, but also because you want to just hedge your bets, right? And say, you're going to have one strategy, you got another, go figure out which one is going to work best. I think that's the, I think it's still evolving.
It's still evolving. Have there been notable or public projects that have been VC funded by Block One? I'm not up on that.
Well, it's not funded by,
or excuse me, by the VCs.
Yeah, I mean, it actually, while we were on this show, I'm trying to get it. So Mike Novogratz of Galaxy Digital just tweeted, oh wait, maybe that actually wasn't. Nope. Okay, wrong. I was trying to read a tweet while the show was going on. But so high fidelity is a huge one, which is the creator of Second Life, and I'm like pulling this up on the computer as we're talking. The creator of Second Life left Second Life to create High Fidelity, which is basically VR, which I think took in $30 million in funding. So that's pretty crazy that they're trying to build this blockchain-based VR world that I always, to me, sounds like Ready Player One style stuff. Yeah. Sorry, it was 35 million. So that's huge.
That is okay.
But right. Otherwise, I think the floodgates are about to open. I don't think that there have been a ton. The hackathons that Block One has done are huge in that they've exposed the community to some proof of concepts, and I think that doubles in purpose to expose VC to proof of concept. So they're like, oh, you can do that? Oh, wow, you can do that? Okay. Let's look for more of that. It's going to evolve, but I think that the floodgates will open soon.
Yeah. And, VCs have this tendency to operate in they'll kind of, in the Silicon Valley, there'll be a project, and that project will pop up, and kind of the sharks will circle it, and all the VCs will look at it, but no one will go for it.
Right.
Once one VC dips their toe in the water first, and there's funding, or there's an offer, then all of a sudden it's a feeding frenzy. So it's very possible that we kind of see that same mentality with how they're approaching this, is that they want to see kind of how the other VCs operate, or what deals they take, or what their strategy is, and kind of,
right.
So yeah, once I think, like you said, once they start, it's going to happen pretty quickly, and we'll see some fast moving projects here. So that'll be we're in such, there's so many angles of why this is just such an interesting point we're at right now. This is just wild all around. So.
A year from now, we're gonna have a lot more. We're gonna have more. I hope we have more DApps than I have gray hairs on my head from the stress of working on a block producer.
We better have more than I've got too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, we can just look at. I started doing these interviews pre-mainnet launch about what EOS was going to be, or just how it was going to launch, and just the immense amount of change since launch, or since pre-launch, is just the amount of things that have happened is kind of outrageous. So yeah, it'll be fun to kind of see where we are.
And that just goes to show and by the way, I just want to add a disclaimer that I don't have a ton of experience working with VCs or in the VC world. That's actually the benefit of having a very flat and diverse organization with, our head of business and strategy. He has that experience, but what you just said, it goes to show that no one really has any idea, right? We're all trying our best to predict the things, but the fact remains is that we're building such a strong foundation upon which we can build whatever it is we can dream up. It's those dreams of what can be built that we're discussing now, but the reality, the here and now, is that the EOS public blockchain is as far as I know, has the most daily active users, or at least the top dApps have the most daily active users compared to the same amount of dApps on any other smart contract platform at only 4 months old. That's the reality. You can call EOS whatever you want. Go look at the numbers and you tell me what you see.
Yeah. And a good heuristic to look at is basically the ability of a company to overcome problems and to pivot and to find solutions actively and work together. And when you look at it that way, when you look at EOS big picture and you're like, oh, well, what are you going to do about this? Or what's EOS going to do about this? And what are they going to do about this? And there's, long-term, how's this going to work? Like, honestly, no one knows, but that's not necessarily what matters, because when you look at a company like Uber, who launched this groundbreaking, just world-changing technology, Uber started in San Francisco with one car. They didn't know what they were going to do or what was going to happen next, but they had that idea and that structure in place, and they overcame and scaled, and that's how it works. So I'd encourage people not to be fearful of all the unknowns, but to look at how well EOS has overcome the unknowns up to this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, we're in a great spot. So it's so fun, man. What type of links, or what kind of like shout outs to the community or asks of your EOS New York community would you like to put out there?
Well, I just want to give a public shout out to Warwick Fitzgerald, our lead blockchain engineer. One of the recent updates that Block One put out, Warwick got a shout out in there for submitting some of the most helpful pull requests to the core code. So just a couple, there's things like that we're doing that isn't necessarily like a announce it from the rooftops kind of thing, but we're out there, boots on the ground, getting stuff done, writing code. Writing about governance, just being as actively involved as we can and trying to do the best for the space. For different shout outs out to the community. EOS Cafe Block, HK EOS for building the best darn block explorer that exists, blocks.io. You basically go into our the EOS Echo, the weekly digest. If you find it that it's difficult to keep up with what's going on in the EOS world, sign up for our weekly newsletter. We just list a whole bunch of links, and you click and read what you want in different categories. And those are our shout outs. The things that we think that people are doing that's really cool, we include in there. Shios just put out a protocol that can move ERC20 tokens from Ethereum onto EOS. That's really cool. There's all sorts of stuff, man. It doesn't stop. So everybody's doing something cool. Everybody's got, there are 70 plus professional organizations around the world, all trying to work their asses off on one thing or another.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't exist anywhere else. Maybe on other DPoS chains.
Yeah, and not to this scale. That's absolutely true. And I love your guys' EOS the EOS Echo, I believe it's called. I'm signed up to that newsletter. It's cool. It's once a week, and it helps me, even though I'm in this full time. It's like I still miss stuff. So that's a killer little market you guys are catering to there.
Check your inbox. We sent out one this morning.
Yeah, there you go. And EOS New York, everything a block away, and have my own personal tagline for you guys. It's EOS New York, the BP that never sleeps. So
cousin to death, man. Cousin to death.
Yeah. So and this is the EOS podcast, my crypto friends. So my favorite way to consume media is through podcasts, because you don't have to sit there and stare at the screen. You can, do dishes or pretend like you're working in your office or whatever else you want to do, and hear about the EOS blockchain. So this is my pet project. So check it out. And we will continue to have interesting people like Kevin Rose from EOS New York on the show. San Francisco Hackathon. Are you guys coming out to the San Francisco Hackathon, Kevin?
Yes. Are we allowed to, I don't know if we're allowed to talk about whether or not we are mentors. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
EOS New York will be represented at the San Francisco Hackathon. I love San Francisco. I used to work out in Sausalito, one of the most beautiful places on earth. Even if the rent, for a single bedroom costs $3,500, is ridiculous. I would never actually live there. But great place to visit. Can't wait.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be at the EOS Hackathon also, possibly as a mentor, possibly helping with some branding for a hackathon team even. And if neither of those pan out, I'll just be there hanging out and getting in the mix, because I live in the area. Yeah, Monday after the EOS Hackathon is a conference about applying blockchain and real dApps that I'm going to be the MC of, and that's going to be in San Francisco. So I know a lot of the block producers will be doing that conference on Monday. So look into that conference. I'll put that in the show notes with a little link if you guys want to sign up and then go to the conference and meet me and meet whatever block producers are there talking. So that'll be fun too. So that's it for today, my EOS friends. And Kev, it was a pleasure to have you on the show, man. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I'd love to have you guys on again. So,
thank you so much, Brandon. It was an absolute wonderful time. I can't wait for the next time. And if it's not till after San Francisco, I'll see you there.
All right, wonderful. Cheers, my friends.
Thank you.
The money is not the prime asset in life. Time is, and your time is